Whoops, we lost somebody. Yeah, we got time. We're going to, like a hot knife through butter, we're going to make this thing work. We're ready?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Representative Morgan, go ahead and call this meeting to order at 10:03 a.m. Right now, would like to approve the minutes as presented. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? All right. Been properly motioned and second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. All right, Mundo. Go ahead.
Okay, the next item we have is 3. It's discussion action on the budget stabilization. Robert Cortinas and his staff will be presenting. I think Margarita's going to be doing that. Let me call up the PowerPoint presentation. There you go.
Good morning. Before Margarita gets started, so you all may recall back in January when I presented the fourth quarter financial report on the general fund, I showed you all that we had approximately $5.3 million surplus. And one of the recommendations at that time was to put some of that money into a budget stabilization fund.
Right.
So the way that item was posted on that agenda was there was no action. And so what we're doing is we're going to bring it back to you all so you all can get a look at the budget policies, what we're recommending, and ultimately take that back to City Council for consideration. So I'm going to let Margarita do the presentation, and then I'll chime in wherever she gets stuck or we need additional clarification on some of the items.
Robert, could you repeat, how much did we have in?
5.3 million. We finished FY 2019. And so over the last 5 years, we've replenished our reserves. And there's a slide in the presentation that shows that information. But essentially, we've replenished our reserves to the tune of 18.3 million over the last 5 years. And so really the intent of this is to help sort of look ahead with the budget that we're about to start entering and start developing. And how can we use some of that savings to essentially reinvest and try to minimize the tax rate impact as we move forward into the next year.
Thank you.
Good morning, Office of the Comptroller, Margarita Munoz, Comptroller. The goal for this presentation is Goal 6, set the standard for sound governance and fiscal management. Hold on. Mundo, you didn't put it in the, oh, you don't have the PowerPoint, you have the PDF.
Okay. Well, that's what we posted. Just scroll it down like that.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you'll be fine. Okay.
Page now.
Well,
No,
it's a PDF.
it's the
We
PDF.
do the Word version.
So we're gonna have to scroll down.
Yeah, just scroll down like that.
Okay, stabilization funds. So usually they're called rainy day funds and reserve and designated fund balances or contingency funds. All that it is monies that are set aside for a specific purpose. Currently, in our financial statements, we report 2 different types of funds. The restricted fund balance, which is by the city's charter, and also unassigned fund balance, which is everything that is not committed or restricted.
Margarita, why don't you tell them about the cash reserve fund and what's required to be in that restricted?
The cash reserve fund? The cash reserve fund is the 5%, as specified by the city charter. It's 5% of the appropriations for the given year, and that's what we report under restricted fund balance. Governmental Accounting Standards Board. The GASB is our rule-setting body. This is what we follow in Office of the Comptroller at the time that we record and report transactions in our financial statements. So what do they say about the stabilization arrangements? A couple of things. They say that they are to be used on emergency situations that cannot be covered with current year resources. They are subject to specific controls, and they sometimes used to cover working capital needs. GASB 54 set the standard to report the stabilization funds, and they are reported as committed within the funds. So If this is approved by the city council, now we're gonna have the restricted fund balance, the committed fund balance, and unassigned fund balance. Government Finance Officer Associations. This is an organization that assists the government managers in developing policies and setting up best practices. So what do they say about the stabilization funds? They recommend the governments to develop policies regarding the stabilization funds, maintain a prudent level of resources to protect the government about reducing services or having to raise levels of taxes and fees, and also identify the uses for those funds. The recommendations is that we develop a minimum and a maximum level for the fund, that we make the policy available to the public and also included in government documents. And we do this when we publish the policies online for the citizens and also through my El Paso, Texas.gov for internal use. This is a graph of the total general fund balance throughout the years, starting in 2012 to 2019. As you can see, starting in 2015, there is a steady increase of about 2 million annually, but in 2019, we actually have 5.3 million increase. This was due to collections of revenues on property taxes in excess of what we budget, and also in sales tax. So we had a very good year, and we double up the increase. So considering the GASB standard, the GFOA recommendation, and the increase in fund balance last year, we are recommending that the city set up a stabilization fund to minimize future tax impact, to protect against raising charges for services and fees, and also to have funding available in case of any specific circumstance arise. The Stabilization Fund serves as a source of financial support for the city to prevent, I'm sorry, I didn't move the slide, I'm so sorry. In case, okay, so it serves as a source of revenue for the city and support the city's budget in times of slow declining revenue growth. It also gave us protection to continue funding priorities included in the strategic plan, and it prevents the city from cutting services due to periods of economic downturns. All that it is a backup plan for the city to have funds in place in case that any situation arises that we are not able to cover. So how is this gonna work? The CFO, the Chief Financial Officer or designee, will recommend to the City Council the amount of the funds annually that are to be set aside, and then as part of the annual budget process, the City Council will adopt the amount as well as the uses for these funds. So the FOAC recommends to bring forward to the City Council the amendment to the budget policies to include to establish the stabilization fund and to commit initially $2.7 million savings to the budget stabilization funds from general fund savings. This concludes my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Question?
Come to that number, 2.7.
So we looked at the total 5.3 million, it's essentially half of that, but the 2.7 million essentially equates to about 0.75, so a little under a penny on the tax rate. There were some other recommendations that we made back in January. We wanted to put some of that towards some vehicle replacement. That wasn't approved, and so that's not the recommendation at the time, but the recommendation to put the 2.7. We'll be coming back in the future, depending upon how we're doing in this fiscal year FY 2020. So I did the presentation on the first quarter. It's still very early in the fiscal year, but even in that report I showed you all that we're projecting a $6 million surplus already. So seeing what we can do to not only replenish our reserves, but then also at the same time looking ahead to what we can do to have some of that money towards offsetting future tax rate increases. And so this isn't something that's new. A lot of cities have these. And actually in December of 2015, the city manager and myself actually recommended that fiscal year we had savings as well. We had made the recommendation at the time to do the same thing, and council decided not to do it. No action was taken on that item. So We know with Senate Bill 2 coming up that we think it's good to start looking ahead. How are we going to address some of these issues? Whether or not we're going to go out to a vote or not if we exceed the 3.5%. But this is just another tool that we can have at the council's disposal to utilize should the need arise.
And so where's the other half going to?
It'll go to the, so she showed you the different types of fund balances we have. So we have our restricted, we have our unassigned, and then with this, we would have our committed. So the additional amount, one, we make sure our restricted is fully funded, and so we're required to have 5% of the prior year's operating budget, which is done. The remaining amount on top of that 2.7, that would all go to the unassigned fund balance.
Okay, so that, did I understand it right, that the stabilization fund is the, if we really need to reach into our pockets, that would be, the first place would be reached?
Yes, and so essentially all it's doing is it's just taking your surplus, and instead of it all going into the restricted or the unassigned fund balance,
Right.
essentially it's just another tool, another resource that you all would have.
Savings.
Exactly, yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, my question, I noticed in the presentation, it made reference that there would be a minimum and a maximum as to how much goes in there. How do we determine that?
So right now, we're not recommending a minimum or a maximum. Since this is new, this would be the first year. The recommendation that we're going to bring forward would be the 2.7 to get us started, the 2.7 million. Obviously, we don't know how we're going to do every fiscal year, so this is going to be something that we'll continue to tweak this policy as we get a little bit further along, not only in this fiscal year, but moving forward. But this would at least get us started in having that resource again and having that tool in place of creating that budget stabilization fund. The saying is, you got to take that first step and be willing to implement something that's going to help you in the future. So we think this is just the best practice. You saw the GFOA, the minimum and the maximum again. So it's balancing the need for future budgets, but then it's also at the same time making sure that we're continuing to increase our reserves.
So how long do you plan on using that model in order to do this? Because my understanding is that you're looking to have what amounts to a sliding scale to determine your annual contribution to the fund. So do we have a basic timeline of, is this going to take 1, 2 years, 3 years for us to figure out what is right so we can commit? Because like I said, it feels like a sliding scale to me. Minimum, maximum, and it was stated in the presentation that annually you'll bring it to council to determine how much to put into the fund. So to me, that's a sliding scale.
Yeah, so it would really vary depending upon obviously how we're doing in that fiscal year. So if it's a really, really good year, that number could change. And so really we just want to get your feedback to see questions like that. So Margarita and myself, when we were looking at creating this policy, looking at, do we want to put a minimum? Do we want to put a maximum? Do we want to say, when we bring back the fiscal year, the fourth quarter, to show you how we did that fiscal year, do we want to say, we'll commit half of that? Whatever that amount is, we'll commit 50% to go into this budget stabilization fund, and then the rest would go into the unassigned. I mean, that I think would be an option, and that would actually have some specifics in the policy that may be helpful. But we really didn't want to tie our hands. We really wanted to leave it up to city manager and myself, bringing forward the CFO, whoever that may be, bringing forward the recommendation to the council. And then everything in the policy clearly says that it's up to the city council, 1, to decide how much will be put into the fund, and then 2, how much or when it will be used. Sure. So again, it all depends upon the council's approval for either.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. All right.
We had it listed for discussion and action. We just wanted to make sure that you all are comfortable with us moving forward to taking this item to the city council for consideration.
Okay.
Can we have a motion to?
Motion to
Second.
Been properly motioned and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have your action. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda, we have discussion action on the ambulance transport billing and collection policy. It's being presented by Chief D'Agostino from the fire department.
Okay.
Get it up, get the presentation up. Oh, no, it's not. It's Debbie.
Chief, you look different.
I know, it's Debbie.
My God.
You get to hear Debbie today. You
I
just have to
just
scroll
scrolled.
down.
I like what you did to your hair. Oh.
Good morning, Deborah Olivas, the Fiscal Operations Administrator with the El Paso Fire Department. I will be going over our revenue drivers, collections, transports, payer mix, charges and fees, and lastly, I'll be going over updates on our billing and collection policy. Our current vendor for billing and collections is Advanced Data Processing, or R1. They've been our vendor since fiscal year 2012. Their contract does expire this fiscal year in June, but they do have an option to extend.
How long is that contract?
It was a 5-year contract,
5 year, and you said it's about to expire?
but
Yeah,
it has
there
an
it is.
option to extend.
Okay, thank you.
So collections have been steadily increasing by about 1% every fiscal year. In fiscal year 19, collections were $11 million. Transports have only increased about 0.5% in fiscal year 2019. Total incidents, however, have increased or shown a larger increase of 1% over the last fiscal year. But overall, both transports and incidents have increased over the previous year.
And why is that? Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's just the number of calls that we get. This graph identifies the payer mix and the revenue collected by insurance type. The payer mix is based on the population and the type of insurance the patients have. So if you'll notice, 42% of the patients billed are represented by Medicare, 17 are represented by Medicaid, 13 are represented by commercial insurance, and 28% are under self-pay. Now, of those percentages, the total revenue collected is 58% for Medicare. So what that means is from the $11 million that we collected, 58% of that was from Medicare. 14% was for Medicaid, 25% from commercial insurance, and only 3% from self-pay. As you can see on this slide, for the percent of accounts with payments, we are collecting 90% of what we bill from Medicare, 72% from Medicaid, 80% from commercial insurance, and 5% from self-pay. This graph provides a general idea of what we're billing and what we're collecting by insurance type. So you'll notice that the average bill for Medicare is $866, and we are only collecting $349, and that is due to the government adjusted rate. You'll notice a major variance under self-pay, where the average bill is $827, and we are only collecting $28. The base rate right now for transports is $855 and $15 per mile.
$15 per what?
It's $855 for the transport and $15 per mile. So in summary, collections remained relatively flat with a 0.01% increase over fiscal year over fiscal year 18. Transports increased by 0.5%, and total medical incidents increased by 1% over last year. Under payer mix, you'll notice that the majority of our revenue comes from Medicare and Medicaid, but we are limited to the rates provided by the government. And then, like I mentioned, the base rate is $855 and $15 per mile. The average charge is $880.73, and the average payment is $229. And now to discuss the billing and collection policy. This is an internal policy that was presented to this committee on September 21, 2015, and it was approved by council on November 17, 2015. We are introducing revisions to the policy, specifically to the charity care section. And this policy is to ensure that we are receiving collections in a timely, fair, and cost-effective manner.
Excuse me,
Yes, ma'am.
so the charity care is what you just went over?
Yes, that's what we added. It's a new item. So for the first 30 days, the patient has 30 days from receiving the invoice to pay that initial invoice. Now, at this point, we've already billed Medicare, Medicaid, and any other insurance type, and the account has transferred over to the self-pay category, which means the patient may have had a balance due on the account that is still due, or they don't have commercial insurance. Now, section 1.4.4 is new to the policy, where the patient has the opportunity to apply for a percentage discount. The patient must apply and must submit proper documentation to the RCM agency, or R1, our current vendor, for the verification of the reduction. Now, yes,
All
ma'am.
right. So how do you let the patient know that, give that information
Oh, thanks.
to the
They,
patient?
they have to, we'll post it on our website, and we are working with our vendor to add a note on the bill.
Okay. And did they also get notification on the bill that they receive, or?
Yes, that's what we're working with the vendor.
Okay.
So after they provide the documentation, the R1 will verify and apply that percentage discount. The percentage discount is based on federal poverty guidelines. So it could be, the percentage discount can be anywhere from 25% to 100% based on the size of their family and where they fall within the brackets, the different brackets. Now, this is in addition to what we currently offer, where the patients have the opportunity to submit a formal letter from the hospital identifying their need to the RCM agency for verification of a discount also that can be applied to the account. After 30 days, we move to 31 days and to 180 days past due. Statements will be sent to the patient, and phone calls will be made in an attempt to collect. We are accepting payment options. We understand that sometimes patients need a little bit more time to pay off their bills, and as long as they're making consistent payments, we will be accepting those payments. Now, if the account exceeds 180 days, it may be assigned to a third-party collection agency. From 180 days to 24 months past due, the account, like I mentioned, may be turned over to a third-party collection agency. The account must be identified as self-pay and no more than 2 years from the date of service for it to be transferred to the third-party collection agency. Payments will be submitted to all payments will be submitted to the third-party collection agency. In summary, this is a summary of all action items and the responsible parties. From 31 days to 180 days, that falls under our current vendor, Advanced Data Processing, or R1. From 180 days to 2 years, that falls under the third-party collection agency. Now, we currently do not have a third-party collection agency, but we are working with purchasing and strategic sourcing and legal in order to procure those services. Now, you'll notice under that same section, there is a 21% late fee that was established by a city ordinance that will be assessed to each account. Over 36 months from referral to collections agency, the accounts will be considered uncollectible. And that concludes my presentations.
So
My presentation.
what happens when it
Here you
becomes, I'm sorry, uncollectible? Just goes into the,
No, at that point, we get with the
Can you use your
what
mic?
happens when it becomes uncollectible?
uncollectible after 36 months.
Nicole Cody, OMB. Once it's considered uncollectible, we're no longer actively collecting it. So the actual billing collection will continue to keep the patient record on hand. in case there is an opportunity for them to come back and pay. Sometimes there's requirements, especially with their visas, that they have to come in and pay those amounts. So we still have all the information, but we're just no longer actively pursuing collections on those accounts. So we still account for them. We just no longer pursue them.
Interesting. And while you're at it, what about those that are tied up because they get an attorney? How do you handle those?
So there's always a timing situation. So as we get, if they go through litigation or if they file for bankruptcy and they do have outstanding payments, we do make sure that the patient's accounts are notified appropriately for those type of payouts. But usually the ambulance services, the hospitals are going to get the first payments first, and the ambulance services might be subsequent. But it just depends on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Interesting. Any additional questions?
So what exactly is new that we're,
It's section 1.4.4, where the patient has the opportunity to apply for a discount,
oh,
a percentage discount.
Okay. And those will be available for the public online? Or do
Yes, we will
Do you
post it
hand
on
it
our
to 'em?
website, and we will have an information on the invoice.
Yes, sir. Can you identify yourself, please?
Good morning. Mario D'Agostino, Fire Chief. We never had an avenue to
Right.
give them those discounts. This is setting that up. So the hospital's had it for a long time. They're going to go through the hospital system too. It follows the
Right.
same federal parameters. So it's just now it's putting the emphasis on the patient to provide that documentation to us through our
stuff.
third-party billing.
Great stuff. Would it be also better to also give them a copy at the time that they
Yeah, really.
are in the hospital and, getting treated, and then just send that paperwork with them, and then, of course, as a backup, considering
Yeah,
that
we
the
don't
city's
give,
doing all
them
these-
a bill as we provide
Yeah.
services.
Okay.
So they're going to get it usually well after they're out of the hospital
Okay,
or after the data service from our end.
okay.
Can you all please define what charity care is?
Yeah, it's,
Talking about adding charity care. Okay, so what is that? The definition.
So it's by federal standards, so it's setting up, if they're in this income bracket with so many dependents, this is the level of charity they would receive. So Thomas or UMC might give them 100% discount if they're well below that poverty range. It might just be a 25% because they're in that gray area. So we let that federal system dictate what that percentage is, and that's all we're saying is we're gonna follow that.
So how do we write that cost savings to the individual off? Because those are revenues that we're basically saying,
It's uncollected funds at this
It's
point in time.
uncollected
This is
funds.
the ones we're not collecting on today. Like we talked about our payer mix and where we're receiving the most of them is through Medicaid, Medicare. That's gonna remain. It wouldn't write these patients off. They've already got that coverage. This is going to the uninsured bracket.
and I'm pretty sure we understand it here, but when we're joined by the other colleagues, you're gonna get questioned on that.
Okay.
yeah, for sure.
And so, thank you for the explanation, and just want to make it available, make sure we cover ourselves all the way around, so people can't say, hey, I didn't know. See,
Yes, sir.
thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Appreciate
you, appreciate it. All right, can I get a motion to accept this?
that. Motion to accept.
All right,
second.
all right. Properly motioned and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes. Thank you. All right, Mundo, audit plan updates.
Yes, now we'll go to item 5, which is discussion action on the audit plan update. What we're gonna go over right now real quickly, because it's real short, it's the first quarter update to the audit plan that was approved by the FOAC back in November.
Yes, sir.
We had worked it, so as required by the professional standards that we follow, 2020, 2060 of the international standards, I'm required to give you an update. And per our audit charter that's approved by this body, I'm required to do it at least quarterly. Okay, so that's what we're doing right now. So we're gonna go over some of the completed projects that we completed during the first quarter. The first thing we completed was a follow-up audit over at the zoo under controlled substances. Those are the medications they use when treating the animals. They had 2 findings on that category. We went and reviewed their processes. It was regarding some lost medication that was missing, and it was reported to, the finding involved updating their records on how to handle missing medication, and also the new update required them to report it to the police department and to the DEA when missing medications are identified.
Sorry to interrupt
okay.
you, but what page are you on?
We're on page, it would be page 2.
Thank you.
On this document right here, Representative.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay,
Got it.
the spiral document.
Okay.
Okay, so that one cleared. Next full audit we did was, we did an audit over, and this came as a result of requests from the FOAC, on the rental of park facilities over at the Parks Department. We completed the audit in September 26, 2019. That's the date of the report. We had 2 findings, and the findings involved updating their policy and the methodology used to calculate the rental rates for park facilities. What I mean, the methodology, we requested that they identify at least a break-even point on their rental of the facilities, whether it be a shelter, a hall at one of the senior centers, or a pool, but at least that we cover at least our portion of the expenses. Not asking them to make a profit, be nice, but at least I'm asking them to at least cover their expenses on renting those facilities. So we'll be doing a follow-up later in the year to see how they came up with their policy. I've already been in contact with the Parks Department several times with different ideas that they have on creating that methodology. So I think it's going to work out really well. The next audit we did, we completed October the 15th, was an audit of Kemper Sports Management, Inc. Kemper Sports is the company that manages Butterfield Trail Golf Course out at the airport. And we went out there and did the audit, reviewed the whole contract, both on the city side and on Kemper side. We were able to identify one finding on that report, and that required the city's inspections of the golf course. According to the agreement, they're required to do a monthly inspection every month of the facilities, including the golf course, the clubhouse, the maintenance barn, from A to Z over there, and it was being done sporadically. So the airport has agreed to begin doing monthly inspections and have them documented on that activity. So I think we're going to see improvement on that one. The airport was very receptive to that suggestion. Well, it was already in the contract. It wasn't even a suggestion. It was a requirement under contract.
They just weren't doing it.
They claimed they were Representative Sarsaga, but they couldn't provide me with documentation. We were able to get documentation for 5 out of 12 months. So we knew they could do it because they were doing it 5 times. We just didn't document it the other 7 times.
And since your visit, that's been taken care of?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Monica Lombraña, yes, she took care of that. She
And-
gave him instructions that it has to be done.
And just so the unusual outline of the golf course, are they compared to other standard golf courses that?
It actually, Butterfield, I used to be an avid golfer. It's actually a high-end golf course. They actually charge as a high-end. It's one of, not, I won't say the most expensive around. I mean, it is the most expensive in El Paso, but when you look at a high-end golf course, it's actually a bargain. El Paso's golf course, if you compare them to the ones in Phoenix or Tucson, Butterfield Trail is a huge bargain to play, and it's a fantastic golf course. You know, it's just right now, like everything in El Paso, they have water challenges. That's just the thing. You know, it's not like some of the other local golf courses that might own their own wells. Butterfield requires on the water utility to provide them water. You know, they pay for it, but you know, there's only so much water to go around.
Right.
So they're limited. They do water it, but it's limited.
They don't have that recycled water?
They have some purple pipe that they're using, but it has to be run through the golf course.
I see.
Yeah, they have some of that.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody wants the purple pipe water.
Yes.
You know, the parks department, and amazing, there's only so much purple pipe water to go around. Even that's being limited because it's,
right.
you know, we're in the desert, water's precious.
How long did you say Kemper's been under contract? management?
Yes, sir. They've been under contract since the Butterfield was built. They've been the one and only contractor out there. They do an outstanding job. They actually have a lot of experience managing high-end golf courses, and they're actually, on the side note, when we looked at that contract, they're actually beginning an initiative. They want to start using it more for wedding receptions and private parties. If you've ever been to the clubhouse, it's really, really nice. So it's just another revenue stream for the golf course.
If I may, really quick, from the city attorney's office, I know that they have been the firm managing it, but their contract was renewed, I want to say last year. So it hasn't been under the same contract, I guess. I just want to
Okay.
make
Oh, I
sure.
see.
Yes.
Thank you.
But, okay, so you know, you have a year period?
You know, I don't want to
don't know.
misspeak on the term,
Right,
but
okay.
I can provide that information when I can look at my files. But I know that it was last year, within the last year.
Yeah, well, it says dated, we saw it on the report dated September 1, 2017. Would that be the most recent
It
one?
probably was put out in 2017 in terms of a solicitation. But I'm happy to provide that to Edmundo so that he can provide you all the
Sure.
information.
Thank you, and also, I guess I would have to ask what.
Go ahead.
Representative Morgan said is, how long has that golf course been in? I forget when it first
Oh,
opened.
God. Let me ask my golf expert. 2007.
Okay, right.
I have a resident golf expert.
Okay. 2007?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, so if you know any big banquet facility or you're looking for one, they're ready to take your business.
Thank you.
They do a really good job with that too.
Is there aggressive promotion on that? Or?
They're working on it. They're working on a campaign to start increasing the rental of the clubhouse for parties, wedding receptions, that type of deal. So, pretty cool. Yeah, the only thing they got to balance it out with competing with the golfers. When they get off the golf course, they want something to eat and drink. So it's a timing thing. So they're working on it. They'll work it out. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the golf course? Okay. Also, we did the overtime reports on Sun Metro and on the parks. This was the last one we were doing for this fiscal year. The FOAC has asked me to continue, I know Rep. Morgan asked me to continue monitoring the overtime for Sun Metro. This year, we've dropped off the parks. We saw no abnormalities. Everything looked pretty good on parks. Their overtime's pretty much in control. Sun Metro will continue to monitor it and provide those updates. We've actually included it in this year's audit plan to continue that monitoring. Now on to the hotline. It's been not very busy, but we've been keeping our arms around it. For the first quarter, as of November 2019, we have right now currently 5 open calls on the hotline, and we got 2 still pending from last year, which we're trying to close out. And the investigations continue to either be done by my office, the Internal Audit Office, or the Human Resources Department, and the various managers they have key pointed in the departments, the larger departments out in city government. So we continue doing the outreach campaign with departments and promoting the hotline. And we do it at least twice a month. Matter of fact, we did it this morning in new employee orientation. When new employees come on board, we give them a lot of material on the hotline program, and it helps. It's it's amazing that about 20% of the calls that we're taking in. I know this statistic because I just helped present that information to the Baldrige people when they were here. About 20% of our calls are not anonymous, which is a pretty good number. The employees give us their identity, their phone number, their email address when they have an ethical dilemma they're wrestling through. And it really helps us because it allows us to communicate back with them and clear up maybe some gray area they might have regarding an ethical dilemma they're wrestling with. So it works out pretty well. And I'm real proud of that 20% do tell us who they are.
So you're considering this a huge success?
Yeah, we've had this program since September 2008 when we went live with it. And we've been very, very lucky with it. I mean, we've done some really good things with it, and I think it's really enhanced our ethical program, our ethics program here with the city. I know the Baldrige people were very, very interested in it. I've never seen a group of people so interested in a hotline in my life. I thought for sure they were maybe SEC coordinators, for the federal government, and they're doing SOX-Oxley compliance, and one of them. So I used to do that work. So it was just interesting that they were very involved with our program. The last thing we have on open, we continue to do those tax refund reviews by state statute. As the auditor for the governing body, which I'm your auditor, we're required to do those, review those refunds. Our goal is to make sure those refunds are processed every month within 30 days of the citizen applying for the refund for property taxes, for overpayments and for double payments, which you'd be surprised how often that happens.
Edmundo, really quick,
Yes.
before you move on to the next part, I was able to pull the agreement for the management of the golf course, and it felt like last year, but it was not last year. The initial term is effective September 1st of 2017 and extended through August 31st, 2022. And there is a one additional 5-year period upon the mutual consent of both parties. Thank you.
And you said 2032?
2022.
Thank you. Oh,
Good program, good golf course. Okay, next we'll go to the pending audits that we've done. Some of these have already been done, completed, because these were done, this was as of November, so we've already finished them. We did a follow-up over at facility maintenance. I believe I distributed that report last week to everybody. We were able to identify on the follow-up some great programs that city management has taken on to address facility maintenance. It's not one thing, it's a combination of several things they've done. Budget increases, they had the bond election for police and fire, which is going to include some upgrades to some of the facilities. They've put some in the general fund budget. They've done, it's like a combination of a lot of things. So we've seen a good improvement on the maintenance of our facilities, and it should continue. I don't see where it would not continue, which is kind of good because we do have some old facilities. Some of our facilities are almost 100 years old. They're just amazing how long they've been in service,
And if I can,
and they get used.
Armando, so also a response to that, so with the public safety bond, so just remember that all of the police stations, all the fire stations will be addressed, which are a large part of the city facility. So we do have that will help offset. And then we did build into the budget the 1.5 million additional to go towards facility maintenance repairs. So again, gradually incrementing that pay-go money that we talked about, not only for public safety capital, but also facilities was one of the items you all approved in the budget this past August.
At 1.5 additional, you're saying that that's going to be used as pay-as-you-go?
Yes.
Yes, that's already built into the budget. We did identify that.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Robert, go ahead, about the 1.5.
Hit the replay button.
So just thinking back to the presentation I did last weck, so with all of the pay-go money you all have approved, not just for streets or public safety, but one of the items that was included was $1.5 million for facility maintenance and repairs. So it's an area that Richard Bristol's done several presentations to you all, showing you the condition of city facilities. They've outlined what some of those priorities are, some of those facilities, whether it's HVAC systems, generators. And so they have a working list that they're working off of. And so you all adopted 1.5 million again for pay-go. So that's built into the budget on an annual basis now for them to go out and start addressing some of those issues.
Thank you.
Okay, the next project that's pending, we've already started drafting the final memo. We do it annually. It's the review of the city managers and the city council's P-card and travel review. We do it every year. This is going to be like my 13th year that we've done it. We've come up with some recommendations for the comptroller to follow. We're looking for an upgrade in our travel policy regarding group travels. We're doing a lot of it. It's not wrong. It's just we're just doing more of it, and we're going to certain functions out of town, and we take a group of people, and we're just asking for an update on our policy for that. So that should work out fine. Nothing out of the ordinary that we found this go around. So everything should be pretty much cookie cutter. Another project we've taken on, it finally made it to the final list of dues that we have to do, and that was we're doing an accounts payable audit over the city attorney's office. We're looking at the way they pay their bills. Are they within budget? you know, just to show you that we do have a balanced audit plan, and even the city attorney's office gets audited. So we're doing that. And Carla was very receptive. I was very pleasantly surprised that she said, yes, come on in, let's take a look at it. She wanted us to take a look at it. So that's a sign of a good manager, when you have somebody like that wants it done. The next thing we're doing, this came as a request from the FOAC, was the animal services live release rates. We're doing a confirmation of the percentages that they report to you. You know how Paul comes up every so often, tells you where they're at. So we're looking at those numbers to make sure they're well supported, and that they can be stood by. They have some standard formulas they're using. So we're actually recalculating and looking at that formula and seeing what comes out of it. But everything looks good so far. I don't see anything out of the ordinary there. The next thing we're doing an audit, also at the request of the FOAC, over at the police department's municipal vehicle storage facility. That's the one way out there on Railroad, where impound cars get put in. And then we also run our auctions out of there for abandoned vehicles, and we're out there looking at it. I got two auditors working on it, and we've actually have looked at the auctions. They've gone eBay on us over there. They used to have a live auction over at one of the hotels, but now they're doing it online, kind of like an eBay. It looks very similar to an eBay. Bidders get online, and they bid online for the vehicle, and they do it all virtual, you know, with photographs electronically on the computer. So we're joining the 21st century on selling vehicles. So we'll have a report there. Lastly, our audit.
Right before you go there, have they modernized, or if they're going, you know, digital?
Yes, they've improved their technology out there.
About their security out there?
Yes, the security is. The thing that we are noticing, Rep. Rivera, is, God, they're jam-packed with cars. That's a problem. And Chief Allen told me that going in, and he asked us if we could take a look at it. So we're trying to do some analysis on that. But when we built the facility, it was just the right size. You know, now, you know, several years later, it's grown. You know, and what's really pushing it, and as a former policeman, you'll understand this. Some of the vehicles out there have been impounded by police, and they're evidence.
Right.
It's evidence in a case, whatever it could be. And sometimes those cases take a couple of years to work its way through the judicial system. So the cars sit out there. And they try to put them in a back corner part of the lot. That way they, you know, kind of, because they're going to be there a while.
Right.
But that has kind of grown too a little bit. And of course, our need for abandoned cars has grown. So it might, I'm looking at it, but it might be time to maybe move a wall out there or two and see if we can expand it a little bit. But it's getting its use. We're generating a bunch of revenue off of it, because before we used to pay a contractor. Now the city makes the revenue. We don't share it with a contractor. What I mean by, we have a contractor running it, but before we had we were using a contractor's lot. There was some of the towing companies, and they were making the storage money. Now, since the city owns the land, we make the storage money on that. So we are getting revenue out of it, but it's getting jam-packed cars.
Yes, and that's why I said it, because then it becomes a haven for the bad guys to go up there and.
Yeah, there's security, there's lighting, there's cameras, there's guards. You just can't walk in and go to the back and, you know, look for a doorknob for your car that broke. No, you have to go through the security gate. It's very, very secured out there. So good facility. It's just,
thank you for that
report.
report. Excellent.
Just a lot of it. The last thing we've been working on is on the longevity and service time increase review. We've been assisting the city attorney's office. That's continuing. We provide data as requested by the city attorneys pending that litigation. So just want to let you know that's still going on. Next, so that concludes everything we finished, everything we're still working on. And I know last week's two of you, Representative Morgan and Representative Rivera, helped us. The reviewers only had time to talk to two people, so that's who we picked. But we did last week, or 2 weeks ago, we had our external quality control review. We contract with the Association of Local Government Auditors, and we had 3 auditors from out of town come in. We covered their travel and their travel expenses, and we were reviewed under the 2 sets of professional standards that we follow. One is the international standards for the professional practice of internal auditing. Those are, like I said, the international standards. And then we've also followed the government auditing standards, which is issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. You can consider those the federal standards. So my office follows two sets of standards, the federal and the international. So the 3 reviewers that came in were from the city of Raleigh in North Carolina, DeKalb County, which is actually Atlanta, Georgia, the county where Atlanta, Georgia sits. One of their deputy chief internal auditor came in. And then Mecklenburg County, which is also out in North Carolina. So we had 2 from North Carolina, 1 from Georgia. So those auditors came in, they spent the week here in El Paso, and they went through all our files. They interviewed staff. As you know, they interviewed 2 members of the FOAC, and they went through all our policies and procedures, and they reviewed us from the period of September 1st, 2016 to June 30th, 2019. Our office is reviewed every 3 years, and I'm very proud to say we passed both exams that they did. I'm very proud of the staff. They did an outstanding job. I might be a tyrant sometimes when it comes to keeping those files clean and documenting everything we do, but it pays off. This is where it pays off, so it was our payday. This is the 5th review we've done under my leadership at the office. We did the first one in 2007, we did one in 2010, 2013, 2016, and now 2019. And we've passed all 5. So this is really good. This information has been used by the city manager and the performance office with the Ball-Ridge applications that they're doing, and the Ball-Ridge examiners really eat this stuff up. They really like seeing who audits the auditor. Well, this is what happens. We get audited every 3 years. So if anybody ever asks, who audits your auditor? Oh no, he contracts it out, and they come in. So in your packets, I have attached both reports for you. After this, I'll distribute it to the entire council, but I wanted to tell the FOAC first before I sent it out to the entire council.
And rightfully so, you should be proud. They paid your staff and you, and basically the city, compliment for what you had in place and how strict you were, how stringent you were on your procedures and stuff. And
thank you.
They talked highly of the staff and all. I'm proud to say that. When they talked to me, I don't know, they probably did the same with you. They were really impressed as to how this community, this city government really works with the auditor and the auditor back with the city.
We have done a lot. It's been done by this council and previous councils, starting all the way back to 2013, when it was put before the voters for a city charter change. When this body, the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee, was created by city charter, by the voters. And the FOAC was given oversight responsibility of the Internal Audit Office. That was a tremendous piece of legislation, and it sets us head and shoulders above a lot of cities and counties in the nation by having that legislation in place.
Which, based off these last 5 evaluations, is evident that it was the right move. And it keeps us on a glide path of moving into the future and being able to, alleviate or, bypass so many obstacles. I will reiterate what Rep. Rivera said, that the auditors couldn't speak highly enough of the staff. So I want to thank you all for everything that you've done, and you guys deserve this big win. I'm going to give them a hand. Come on now.
I want to recognize 2 of the auditors. These are the secret sauce for our staff. I want Daryl to stand up. Daryl helped us with the international standards. He did a self-review. But as you guys know, Rep. Morgan, being in the Army and a police officer, you have to have that sergeant, right, that just keeps everybody in line. Or the mom that's in charge of everything and in charge of discipline. Well, that's Liz De La O for us. So she's our sergeant major. She keeps us in line. She makes sure the quality control works, and I cannot say enough about her. But we're going to try to find some way to celebrate in the office. I'm coming up with some plans or something. They told me the other day they want to go to the L&J. So I said, okay, we'll figure it out. One day I'll take them all to the L&J for lunch.
I almost had 2 moving to El Paso, and the third one was on the fence, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, so we had that. So we'll figure it out. We're only one of two cities in the state of Texas that follows the international standards and the
No.
federal standards, and the other is City of Houston.
Yeah.
And City of El Paso is the next one. We're the only two in the whole state.
All kidding aside, Mr. Calderon,
Yeah.
congratulations.
No,
on your
thank you, guys.
record.
Thank you. I mean, thank you, because this doesn't happen without the full act, okay? And that's the independence that we are graded upon, because that's the first thing the reviewers look, is the office independent? And we are, per city charter. It's in the book. I mean, I can't even change the book. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, last thing we have, we met on, the FOAC last met on November 19th, and that's when we did the fourth quarter, and we introduced the audit plan, and here's the agenda for that. Here's the list of all the trainings we go through. As you can tell, they train, and they retrain. We gotta be ready for anything that happens. You know, I try to cover what's going on in city government world, county government world, and some of the hot issues out there, so we try to train up for it and just be ready in case if it ever comes here. So we do that. Community service, one of my auditors, he's not here today, Mike Montiel, he's my auditor for my number 2 guy. He actually participated in one of these reviews. It's a reciprocal program. We go do somebody comes and reviews us, and we all help each other, and we have a guide that we follow. Mike went out to California and did the county of Ventura out in California, and he reviewed them, and he was out there in September. So you can see that. Second thing we did in October, I visited the city of Phoenix, the Institute of Internal Auditors, the chapter out there, the auditor group, had requested a risk assessment training. I do trainings all over the country for auditors, and they really liked our risk assessment that we use for our audit plan and how we develop the audit plan for the city. And we got a bunch of questions on that. As a matter of fact, people are asking me for the shells and the models that we use because they wanted to use that. So it's pretty good. Audit plan, here's all the hours. Here's the audit plan. You can see how we're biting into it. In the first quarter, you can see one column, you'll see what we budgeted, and then you'll see the year-to-date hours, how we're just biting into that, and that's how we're using our time. The second quarter, we're starting to bite into that. Third quarter, we take a couple little nibbles in there. And the fourth quarter, same thing. So with that concludes my update. We completed 7 audits and projects in the first quarter, and 6 are pending, and we continue pushing them out as quick as we can. Okay. And then the last thing we have, next thing we have is the result of our client surveys. I've passed those out to you. I've given everybody a copy of them. Those are results of our surveys. They continue to come out pretty good. I especially get a big kick. I do get a kick because I insist that the auditors remain professional when they're out there working with the other departments. We have to maintain that frame of mind when we're out there. And that's probably one of the comment I keep seeing over and over, how professional they act when they're out there, and they don't act like bullies. You know, they don't tell everybody, you have to stop and just give me, you know, we work with them, and we try to get it done as quickly as we can, but working with the departments at the same time, because I know they're busy, and being audited is some not always a fun thing to do, but we have to do it. Okay? And then the last thing, I've already, we talked about the external quality review. I've included the letters for you, and you can see the letters here. They're actually signed by the 3 auditors that came in, and you can see the signatures there. And the red one would be, the one with the red border is the international standards, and then the one with the yellow line is the federal standards. They choose a color. It's just weird. They like to be color coded. And then with that, they gave us, we were presented with 2 certificates. These are what the certificates look like, and we'll be posting those on our wall of honor in the office.
All right.
But with that, we are finished with the agenda. That's the other one.
Any additional questions or comments?
Any questions? Comments?
Yes, I want to get invited to your celebration.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. I will.
Outstanding.
Yeah, there's a vegan salsa over there that they want to try. I got to see. I'm just curious. I've never seen a vegan salsa. So with that, I think we're ready to adjourn. I think that's what I think. But they say sometimes they're fried or something. I don't know.
Well, we appreciate it.
Roasted.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
He left.
All right. Thank
Second.
you. FOAC is adjourned at 10:02 a.m. Thank you.